So, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Claire France, and I'm the program coordinator for the Kansas INBRE. Sure, all of us know what that is at this point, but we're going to go ahead and get into our undergraduate seminar series for the spring semester. For right now, we typically try to have these about once a quarter. There's been a little bit of weather that's gotten in our way recently, and just kind of some other travel and university stuff that's been happening that's made it a little bit difficult for us to establish a consistent schedule, but definitely looking to do this, like I said, every quarter from here on out. And so today we have just a group of panelists, to talk about life after graduation and things for our undergraduates that might be particularly applicable for them to know after y'all graduate. So if we want to go ahead and I'll stop sharing my screen and then we can hop into quick introductions of our panelists, then that would be great. And we'll just go left to right here, but I'm not sure if Dr. Fields will have a chance to hop on. So we might have to just maybe Dr. Stanford could kind of hop in occasionally or just
Sure.
have three,
Happy to.
whatever makes the most sense there. But Dr. Gashti, would you like to start?
Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Okay, that's great. So I'm a recently joined assistant professor at Pittsburgh State University in chemistry department. I've started here since last July. Since that time, I've been engaged with the polymer chemistry program and I've been trying to actively recruiting the students for K-INBRE program, uh, specifically undergraduate research, which would be key to give them the goal and the perspective of how they can be later on consider research for their master studies, for their PhD studies. So this actually initiates somehow it makes the background of the research for them to actually focus later on whatever topic they like to pursue. Either they can even use this for their future career. That gives the idea of how they can study, in which field they are interested more. If they want to be, that the biomedical area is pretty broad, even it can be divided different fields, so they can consider this more specifically, which area they are more interested. So as long as Cambridge's team actually has lots of expertise and these expertise aligns in different areas, fields, that would definitely benefit. The students gonna have the benefits of, envisioning different areas and seeing which area they would like more as a better fit for their future. So I've been about myself. My background is I have a PhD in textile chemistry, but because textile is something it's industrial, type of material. It can be applied in different fields, and one of the major textile aspects in terms of the application is biomedical application. So I'm trying to actually bring my expertise and knowledge in terms of the knowledge that I've gained in the past 20 years in the industry, bringing that knowledge to the university, helping the students to understand more about the practical aspects, and bring, somehow interconnect between the theoretical aspects and the practical. This is very important because my industrial aspects, my industrial background helps that, because if you don't have that background, sometimes you don't really know what industry actually needs in general and how you can adapt yourself with the industry needs. So that was one of the reasons I stayed in the industry for 20 years, and now I thought probably it's the time for me to come back to the academic to share my knowledge and experience with the students. So I really love this exchange, and I try to actually maintain my contacts in the industry too. So that's something students gonna be also benefiting.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Dr. Balthazor.
Hi, I'm James Balthazor. I'm a professor of chemistry. I teach biochem at Fort Hays State University, and I am probably the only person here that was funded as a student, then as a faculty member, and now campus coordinator. So I've kind of seen all three facets, and my lab works on silencing RNA. So I'm happy to answer any questions. If anybody has any questions, I'll keep it short and sweet so we can really introduce John Stanford.
Thanks, James. Go ahead, John.
Hi, I'm John Stanford. I'm a professor in cell biology and physiology at KU Medical Center. I'm the program coordinator for K-INBRE and the campus coordinator here at KU Med. I've been a faculty for 20 and a half years. I've gotten into administration now as an associate dean for research and graduate education here in the School of Medicine. Um, and I have a background where I was a psychology major and I worked as a research tech for 2 years at my undergraduate institution before becoming a graduate student. So I have been able to kind of survive, and so I certainly have opinions and thoughts on how to do that and do different things in your career. So I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. Dr. Eller?
Hi everyone, I'm Olivia Eller. I'm a research assistant professor also at KU Med. I got my bachelor's at Kansas State University, and then I came to KU Med for my graduate school, and then I stayed and did a postdoc here at KU Med. And then I actually received, or I applied for and got a grant with the Department of Veterans Affairs as a postdoc, and then I became joint appointed at the VA and was promoted to a research assistant professor at KU Med. So I recently became faculty only about a year or so ago, and I study chronic pain after spinal cord injury as well as chronic pain and aging.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So, this is pretty open-ended for what anybody wants out of it. But yeah, basically, we're just having our expert panelists here to answer questions for any of the students that have thoughts or concerns about what this might look like, after you graduate. Do you want to go to graduate school? Do you want to get straight into industry? Do you want to go to a specific type of professional school? Those types of things. So, are there any questions just to start us off?
Don't be shy.
I still don't know what I want to do when I grow up either, so it's fine.
James, you do everything already.
I'll, in the absence of a question, I'll just say that I did it backwards. I went to academia very last, so I traveled the world a little bit and worked a lot before I came to academia. This air conditioning is amazing. I love academia. Just so you're you're aware. So Jason, an ambulance and a fire truck and going overseas for years is what my background was. So coming here, I can tell you that things to do after graduation, a lot of them I've done before graduation. And one thing that I could give you the most help on is set some realistic goals. If you were me, I'm not a small guy. I'm probably never going to be a jockey in a horse race, right? So set a realistic goal, something that's achievable. Don't sell yourself short, but be ready to move forward and do something that you can achieve.
Absolutely, that's great insight. I can go ahead and moderate a few questions, maybe to just get things rolling, and then we'll see what happens off the cuff. But I guess I'll just go ahead and start by asking, do you believe that there is, do you believe is probably yes. So I'll say, what do you believe is the value of post-undergraduate education, and how have you maybe seen it particularly utilized in your current careers? So panelists,
Cool.
just open and yeah, anyone, no order or anything.
I'll start off as a psychology major. You pretty much have to do postgraduate education unless if you want to stay in psychology as a career. I know there's some other jobs you could probably have, but there are more lucrative bachelor's level jobs in science um, than psychology. So I knew I was interested in it, and I knew I pretty much needed to go to grad school if I was going to get a job in it in psychology. And that was my reality. So
I guess I'll chime in. My reality was as I changed my mind at the last minute. I was accepted to medical school, and the week that I had to decide, I decided research was better for me. So I guess one thing that you can keep in mind is after graduation, you can still change your mind and go a different direction. But without the graduate study, I wouldn't be here. Obviously, I would probably be doing some looking at a white powdery substance in some crime lab somewhere. So the graduate work gives you another avenue. I could still go look at a white powdery substance, but it opens the door to do other things. So I'm sure you're going to have a panelist of PhDs trying to push you into going into grad school, but it's okay to not go into grad school. You could take that gap year, you could travel, you could do some things, but life gets more expensive once you graduate, and so do the responsibilities. So that's just kind of my 2 cents.
Yeah, I went straight from undergrad to my PhD to postdoc to where I am now. So my path has been pretty linear, but in my graduate school class, there were quite a few people who had gone to nursing school and decided they wanted to get into research or gone into like biotech and decided that if they wanted to move up in their company, they had to come get their master's or PhD. So I'll reiterate that obviously you don't have to have everything figured out right away, and it's good to get experience before making. It's a big decision to go to graduate school because it's a lot of work and it's difficult to do. But once you do decide, there's going to be a plethora of people who've had different experiences, and no path is as straightforward. So I agree that you don't have to have it all made up right now. But if you have questions about going, a linear path straight to becoming faculty, that's what I've done. So I'm happy to answer anything about that.
I just based on my experience, because I've been ups and downs, I've been in these ups and downs many times. So it depends, once you finish your bachelor, if you want to just enter to the job market, as soon as possible, or either you want to narrow down for graduate studies, but at that time, because in graduate studies, you will be more focusing on the doing research. You would still get some credits by being in classes, but so far I think that it depends on how different people think. But in general, to me, bachelor, studying bachelor would be, in general, the most difficult stage. Because you are engaged with lots of courses. Lots of being in lots of. You have to spend lots of time in your classes. But when you are in the graduate level, either master or PhD, you would be definitely flexible in your timings. You can moderate that, and also in terms of but you, on the other aspect, you will be somehow missing the job market. You won't be entering to the job, in terms of the entering to the industry, to work in the industry. You're not exchanging that much with the industry. You're more focused because you have to be more focused on the research in the graduate level. So you're not in that, you don't have that opportunity to be engaged with the industry, but you still have this opportunity to choose. Either you want to just jump to the industry after your bachelor, or you like to continue this research, aspect. As I said, the K-INBRE actually is a really great program for the undergraduate students to actually. Now they can decide either they like to continue this research, and then they can transfer their project or their knowledge in the graduate level, or they don't like it. This is the step they can choose, and then they can easily transfer to the to the industry. So I mean, this is a really great opportunity, especially with funding that available for the students. I mean, they can professors have the capacity to actually define the projects based on the allocated budget, and you don't need to have like a big project. Whatever the project you can define, you can handle that, and the professors have the expertise to to cover that aspect, and that gives a brief overview from the research, and then you can go more in depth when you want to be graduate students.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Dr. Gashti. Yeah, I know that Julie had a question in the chat that Dr. Stanford said he would be open to answering. So I'll just read it so that everyone knows. I'm a senior undergraduate and have been accepted into a few doctoral programs. With the current decreased state of funding for graduate school programs in the US, this has slightly impacted my opportunities and has greatly negatively impacted others that I know. Have you seen patterns like this before? And how have doctoral programs rebounded from circumstances like this?
Yeah, that's a great question, Julie, and I will take some exception with the premise of this question. I don't think that funding for graduate programs has decreased yet. The money's still there. Of course, we all hear of the threats now, but the funding for our program, our biomedical programs here at KU Med it has not decreased. In matter of fact, we made a decision um, uh, once a few weeks ago. Our administration did that we're going to buy while the market's low. We increased the number of graduate student slots that we're going to try to get with our IGPBS program. And so, there's different ways to react, and I understand there are universities that have decided to either freeze their admissions. I think Vanderbilt might have been one of these, and some others that I've heard of. But we're taking a different stance here at KU Medical Center, and I can't speak for other programs, but yes, historically speaking, I was in an undergrad in the late '80s, and threats to science. Uh, this is nothing new. There were some scary times in the '80s with this, but budgets for NIH have increased. Um, they doubled the NIH budget from the late '90s to 2003. Matter of fact, there was the fear that there was a glut of PhD students, and these people are going to get jobs. But the NIH budget, and I know there are other funders for graduate programs, but it is increased every year. Now, whether that's caught up with inflation, that's another story. But you know, I don't think that, and we discussed this in a meeting I had right before this one, where graduate students were worried, what should we tell them? Well, it worrying is not going to solve any problems. We can't predict what's going to happen. Um, in about 2 years, there'll be another election, and things might look different after that. I've been around long enough and followed politics long enough to know that when something happens that affects a lot of people, there's a course correction every 2 years. So don't get too discouraged about what you're hearing in the news now.
Awesome. Any other thoughts on that from other panelists?
Yeah, don't worry about something that hasn't happened yet. That's the main thing. And it can always get worse.
Awesome. So as another question, um, I guess I would be curious to hear about what the transition was like from either undergraduate to graduate education or undergraduate to straight to industry. And did you feel like skills from undergraduate life were useful, or did it feel like totally starting from square one and relearning everything?
I want to hear Maz answer this.
So what I can say, it depends how you think about it. If you want to immediately enter to the job market with the industry to see what experience you can get, and you can just probably stay in the industry for a few years, at least one, 1 or 2 years, to get the idea how in general industry works. And you can probably switch from one company to another, but as long as you would be satisfied with what you're doing during your career in the industry, that means that you like your work, so you enjoy that. But if you think that you like to get into more aspects of the research, so that's where the transition toward the graduate level comes in play. So that's where you can think about get into that transition and get more knowledge, because you already gained the industry knowledge. Now you want to practice a new, get into like a new, see what other risks you might be able to get into. I'm always open for different risks. I'm always for getting different risks, and that helps you actually to gain new knowledge. That's if you always keep yourself open for practicing and experiencing new risks, that helps you actually to learn many things around, and also that can be something you're gonna build your life based on. And that's what I have been doing, as I mentioned, because I have been in these ups and downs. After I finished my graduate, I entered to the industry. I worked for 2 years in the industry, and I thought, okay, there's too much work, overloads in the industry. Now I'm thinking probably I can now be a little bit relaxed, coming back to the university, doing my research, more focused, not too much like a stress. Sometimes you get lots of stress in the industry. But when you switch to the university, work, like doing study on the graduate level, you won't be, exposed to that high, like a level of, stress. If you like your major, as long as you pick the major you like, you would be happy during your graduate studies. And then that's what the transition is, either you like to, the master studies is actually a good transition. It's better to actually do the master. This is one thing many students actually want to escape from, like undergraduate. After they finish their bachelor, they just want to start PhD. But what I recommend is having this transition, just short-term transition in 2 years or 3 years for the master studies, gives you lots of ideas how the life on the graduate level works. And if you get the master level, you gain lots of knowledge in terms of the research. But that would be something even applicable for the industry, because in the undergraduate level, the research is not as deep as what industry needs. But when you get the master level, that industry actually somehow matches with what the industry needs in terms of the research. So like a PhD is sometimes it's way higher qualified, in general for the industry. For your choices when you get the PhD is limited, to be in the industry. There's not too many openings for you to be as an industry person. So somehow you have to just see, the positive aspects and negative aspects. Always you have to put them all in balance and see which one is better for you to move. So that's something you have to always forecast before entering to the program. So that's that's what I've seen so far. As I mentioned, once I finished my, I did few years in the industry, then I moved back for the master, again, did some work, again, moved back in the industry, again, switched to the, to PhD. When I was in the PhD, I was not like Olivia mentioned, like a pretty straight. So I was like in different, I got these different aspects. When I was in the, PhDs, as a PhD student, I was actually older than other PhD students around me. But the thing is, you are somehow senior, in that team. You gain some knowledge, and that might help you somehow to overview what type of research you like, because you already gained some knowledge in the industry, and you can bring those knowledge and share with your professor. And that time you can even pick some of the research that can be a good fit for also industry. So that time, it doesn't need to be necessarily fully like a theory in the PhD level, but you can also bring what the industry in general needs and make your thesis more focused in the industrial level. So that helps you actually a lot. So
Yeah, I when we're looking at graduate student applicants, having some kind of experience after graduation is usually a positive, um, e- especially if you have, if you have no undergraduate research experience. That's going to be tough, especially if you go to a school that has opportunities for that. So that's evaluated for us. I'll add one little difference in the master's versus an entry level PhD program is that I most PhD programs, at least in biomedical research, carry a pretty good stipend or salary and waive tuition, and a lot of master's programs might not have that opportunity. So you have to weigh what you want to do, but I agree that there are pros and cons of both types of programs. But generally graduate school is fun, and it's easier, I thought, than undergrad.
I think the hardest transition for me from going to undergrad to graduate school was kind of changing the way that you learn or you think about things. Undergraduate, I feel like, was a lot of memorizing facts, things like that. And then you get to grad school and it's very much critical thinking and designing experiments or thinking deeper about the subjects. So that was probably the most difficult thing for me, but obviously you're in it all the time, so you quickly learn how to to change how you think about things. And I think that one benefit from going straight from undergrad to graduate school was I was still kind of in school mode. So I hadn't taken a break from classes and learning, and I just kind of went straight through. So I was used to doing that versus some of my colleagues who are in my class. If they had taken a break, it was a little more difficult for them to jump back into being a student.
Absolutely. That totally makes sense. Great answers from everyone. So the next question I was thinking about is, um, what are the primary preparations that go into post-undergraduate life, and what does that look like? Obviously, I'm sure the biggest things that come to people's minds are probably like resume and cover letter type stuff. But you're welcome to speak on those elements, but also, is there anything that maybe people don't think of that would be particularly useful when, looking to transition and prepare for graduate school or industry life?
I can start with that one. So the one thing that we haven't mentioned on is that we've been talking about what you're going to do after graduation, but you've left out the human factor, falling in love, having children, chasing after little kids. I had my first kid, my first semester at K-State, in grad school. My wife went into labor, a false labor, by the way, made me miss my first final. And then when she went into labor the second time, I didn't leave my final. Luckily, it was a false final also. So you have to take into account that you have to be a human also. The things that are important to you are going to come to the forefront. So for me, it was getting married, having kids, doing those types of things while trying to maintain lab time. And I thought graduate school was far easier than undergraduate school. They turned me loose in a lab and said, take half the credit hours, but have fun. So I loved it. It was great. It was perfect for me. And I was an early riser, and I'd go home late, which I'm sure my wife loved with newborns at home. So there's benefits. So just keep in mind the things that you're forgetting are your life. There's a lot more than a pipetter in your future. Think about, you got to sit next to a person for the rest of your life, hopefully, and let them complain at you. Not that my wife complains.
Thanks, Jay. I will say that that's true. There's life. Yeah, that was I was not at that stage yet when I was in grad school. So I went to the lab 7 days a week for months at a time because I was doing these behavioral experiments. And that was my life, and I enjoyed it. And but as far as preparing yourself, you got to start before your last year in as an undergrad. I mean, one key, if you're going to go to graduate school, or if you're looking for a research job in industry as with a bachelor's degree, or frankly just about any job, you're going to have reference letters and experiences. And if you're not taking advantage of resources at your institution, and in this context, I mean research experiences, because this is what we do, then it's going to take you a little while after you graduate before you're going to be ready from a CV point to get into grad school, especially if those experiences were offered at your institution. So they're going to wonder, why didn't you do that before? So the time to start preparing for life after undergrad, if you want to go into science or health related profession, is to think about these and get relationships with professors as an undergrad as early as you can.
Awesome. Any other thoughts on that question? Cool.
Dr. Stanford,
Yeah,
can you hear?
go ahead.
Yeah. So I think one or probably 2 semesters before you finish to be graduated, that's actually where you can start thinking about which area you want to be focused, and also trying to see what in general what the industry trend is. For instance, which industry is more hot, which fields you can. That's the time where you can think about internship programs, getting internship program, and entering to some level of internships that actually would be applicable for the industry if you want to enter to the industry. And then that helps you actually to adapt your CV based on those industry needs, and be able to enter to the job, apply for whatever job which would be the job would be desirable for you. But I mean, that's the area where you can also think about, 1 year before you graduate, you can think about what research topic you can also pick. I mean, this Cambridge, as I mentioned, is a great area. You can pick adapt your research based on the industry needs and the trends, and then I mean that gives you lots of benefits.
Yeah, that's a good point, and I don't know as much about that world as you do or as I should. Um, and a resources like BioKansas, you could probably reach out to them and ask, tell them what you're interested in, and they probably have on their membership roster someone who could answer questions about internship opportunities, or what does this your sector, your company look for when they're going to hire someone, what experiences. So that's a good point.
Excellent. Um, any students that are on, obviously, always feel free to keep jumping in with questions or post in the chat or whatever. I'll just kind of, I'm here to just keep the ball rolling. So, I was thinking about something that might be really useful for students to know is some very detailed like specifics as to what skills are particularly applicable now from your experience either in industry or academia, for those roles. So I think there's always kind of these types of little workshops and stuff tend to have like generalized lists and things like that. But I was hoping maybe our panelists could try to get very specific and talk about this is a great skill, this is a great skill, this is a great skill, maybe your top three or something like that.
I think some good skills would be time management, being able to manage your time well and be efficient with what you spend your time doing. Um, and also critical thinking skills are important, and then writing and presentation. So a lot of, at least what I do, is writing papers, writing grants, or presenting my data at conferences, things like that. So, yeah, I would say time management, critical thinking, writing, and presenting skills.
Those I agree with Olivia on that. I will also add that resourcefulness and independence. When you enter into uh, anything new, you're going to need help from other people. But um, it's always valuable to show that you're resourceful. You can try to figure something out before you go to your PI or professor and ask. At least talk to the other people in the lab, try to problem solve. So problem solving is important. You know, being a good a lab citizen, whether that's being able to get along with others, and that's also important as well. But these are I like the ones you mentioned, Olivia. Those are probably top, but I'm just adding these others. Time management is very important, to, I mean, as as an undergrad, I had a lot more free time than I did as a graduate student because I was in classes, um, or doing my research in the lab. Um, as an undergrad, I had a lot tougher time. I wasn't a good time manager, but I thought that was it's always important to have good time management skills. Um, but you're kind of at your own pace though as a student, a grad student, as far as writing things and your thesis and papers and dissertations. So that's where time management is important.
I think that one thing to add to that is not being afraid to work. I remember K-State having buddies that showed up at 11, taught their class that they were covering for a professor, and then they'd go take a long lunch, and then they'd work in the lab for 2 or 3 hours. Meanwhile, I'm not saying that you have to do it this way. I'm putting 10 to 12-hour days in the lab, but they didn't graduate for 2 years after it already graduated the lab. So sometimes that, if I was to quote my father, he'd say, shit or get off the pot. And sometimes you just got to do it. You just got to buckle down and get it over with. It's not always going to be fun, especially when you're in that writing phase. And it's a lot easier to go over and look at Netflix than it is to finish that materials and methods section than, you know, and it depends on your PI as well. My PI was hands off completely. He asked for a draft every few months or every few weeks. So and he never gave him any criticism other until he just destroyed you in the open session. So I think you got to be willing to work. It's not hard work. My whole thought is that if you can make it into grad school, you will graduate with a degree. I mean, the weed out process is good enough that I think anybody can achieve grad school. It's just, do you have the wherewithal to beat your head against a rock for 4 extra years? Better than 8 years in med school.
Let me answer this question real quick.
From
Where
Caroline.
huh?
From Caroline in the chat, are you saying?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Do you want to read it?
It's
I think it's just good to clarify what the question is.
clarify.
That's my job. Okay, I will read it. With everything going on in the government right now and all the layoffs at the NIH, do you guys think that NIH funded programs like PrEP or other extramural post-bac programs will be safe for us to apply to? And if not, what are some other options that we should explore if we don't want to go to grad school right after graduation?
Yeah, that's a great question. A, I think you should always apply. B, I think these programs are definitely at risk, especially if they're DEI related or focused on underrepresented groups. They're going to be at risk. That doesn't mean you shouldn't apply. Doesn't mean they're going to be canceled. So go ahead and apply. I will say that what I did working as a technician after, or a research assistant, if you want to call it that, after I graduated, was a lot like a post-bac program. I was working on an NIH grant. My professor let me take some graduate courses while I was working because they were in that same department. So, you know, I think that doing that is just going to be about as valuable as the post-bac program, from what, in my opinion. So definitely apply, but also look for positions where you'll be doing essentially a similar thing. Steve.
Hey,
Probably.
I apologize. I had an Army recruiter in my office, and then I just lost my brain and ran and helped the student for an hour. So my phone was in my office, so I didn't even see this. So I apologize for missing.
Are you joining up?
Yeah.
I'm in.
Don't worry about it. It's no problem at all.
And no, I'm not joining the army. That was for my students. Yeah.
That's what I
Yeah.
meant. Yeah.
I'm not joining the army.
I think Dr. Gashti also had a comment to the question in the chat. So
You have to always diversify your options, because now it's the time to think critically, especially with the current situation. I'm thinking, for currently probably there are going to be lots of applicants toward private sectors. Lots of layoffs from the government, so they're going to be switched to the private. So you have to now consider those factors. Also, possibly that it might be good for private sectors to get more expertise. I mean, it might be a good opportunity for the private sectors these days if there are some special expertise that they can hire now. And that can be something you can consider, as I said, this can be as a short transition for you to go to the industry, get the expertise. I mean, this time gonna be passing. It won't be forever. So that you might see some transition later for the funding program to see it's getting in the better situation, so you can switch back. I mean, to these programs.
I think that's really great advice. I know these are very uncertain times, and it's totally reasonable to have concerns. So I'm glad that we got that brought up. I know we are coming up on the hour mark, so I think I'll just maybe wrap up with one last question myself, and then if anybody has any final ones, we can definitely fit those into. But don't forget, this meeting is being recorded, so yeah. I was thinking just kind of almost off of Caroline's question. It might be good for our panelists to address the concept of work-life balance and also kind of along with that, just like elements of mental health. I think in particular with new administration, there is a chance that those things are going to be a little bit devalued. And I think a lot of students nowadays, especially post-COVID, are feeling some pretty powerful effects of them. So I was just wondering y'all's advice on how to deal with that, how to manage work-life balance, how to feel, how to deal with, feeling overwhelmed or anxious or anything in regards to how demanding academic work can be.
I don't think it matters if you're in grad school or academia or a job. I think the most important thing in my experience anyway. So I worked in some pretty high stress environments where people died, and that was what my job was. But it didn't bleed over to my life because when I left that job, I tried not to dwell on it because it will change and impact your life. So you have to be able to figure out the word no. No is a succinct answer as well. Hey, do you want to do this? No. You don't have to elaborate. No can just be what you have to say. So learning when to say no is important. That's the most important thing I learned in the tenure track was once now I'm tenured, now I can say no and not feel like, oh man, I'm not going to get this letter of recommendation or anything. Just to learn to say no, and that's going to help your work home life balance more than anything. Dogs are great too. They help a lot. They always love you.
In my experience with work-life balance, especially in grad school, and I guess now too, I had a PI who she was basically like, as long as you're getting your work done, that's what's important. You don't have to be here from 8 to 5 every day. The important part is that you're getting your stuff done, and if you need to leave early and take a mental health half day or something like that, that's okay, as long as you get your stuff done. And I definitely took advantage of that. Obviously, you still have to do the work eventually, but if you're working with the right people, a lot of the times the important thing is obviously focusing on yourself and taking the time for you and not necessarily pushing yourself so hard that you're burnt out, because then you're not going to get any work done. So I think finding the right mentor, the right people around you is also important for work-life balance and mental health. And then also my first year in grad school, I had a couple roommates, and I think if I hadn't had them, I would have just been in my room all night studying, and they got me out of my comfort zone and, helped me relax a bit. So I'm not saying that you have to have roommates to do that, but keep your friends and your support system around you, and don't get too roped in and too serious about everything.
I'm sort of like James. I think that dogs are fantastic. And I can say that I'm a slow learner because I'm on my second marriage. My first one was probably not successful, in part because I didn't have a good work-life balance. And so I'm sort of an example of what not to do, probably. So as a PhD student, that's where I was all the time, was probably in the lab, and just my mind was on that all the time. So yeah, you've really got to think of those around you, and sometimes it takes sort of a traumatic experience in your life to get you to sort of think that way. But also exercise is a great mental health sort of booster. And so you really need to probably sort of get on a schedule and make that a part of your life. And I think that that'll help your brain also. And so as well as your attitude.
That's great. Thank you, everyone, so much for those thoughts. And yeah, we're basically right at 2 o'clock now, so I want to be respectful of everyone's time. And I think we'll go ahead and wrap this up unless there's any last minute burning questions from anyone.
If anyone who has questions on this call or who listens to this, feel free to email us, me, spam James's email, with any questions you have. So
Absolutely, yeah. I can connect anyone with a number of useful resources that K-INBRE has to offer these panelists or anyone else that we work with. It's a great network to be a part of, not to toot our own horn, but yeah, lots of good things that we have going.
toot.
Yeah.
And I have John's cell phone number if you really need it.
So divulging personal information now. So, um, well, yeah, I do want to thank everyone for attending, and we're going to keep growing these, hopefully, and being intentional about yeah, delivering information that our undergraduates find relevant and useful. So
Great job, Claire.
thank you. Thanks everyone so much, and have a great rest of your day.
Yeah. Sorry for not being there at the first.
That's okay, Steve. No worries. Thank you.
See you.
Bye-bye.